Hello, welcome to another CleaveTech tech tip. Can you guess what we're going to do today? Well, you may have seen what's inside this package in a previous video, so I better get on, I better open it up and start work. Did you manage to guess who it's from? Did you manage to work out what it's actually going to become? Well, we might have to wait till the end to find out what it's actually going to become. So I need to get this out of the packet and we can have a closer look at it. Be back in a moment. So here it is, out of the packet. You can see all the pieces here. And I'm going to turn this into a completed chassis. And then I need to put a motor in it. So how I'm going to do that? Well, I'm going to start by just making sure that both surfaces of this metal, while it's all together, while all the pieces are sort of fixed together, I'm just going to use a bit of wet and dry paper over the surfaces on each side, just to clean them up a little bit. So you can see that where it's been run through the EDM wire machine, and it sort of discolours the metal a little bit. It is not rust, it's just a surface discoloration. But that obviously prevents us from being able to solder it as well as we could. Also, I need to clean up inside the little holes where all the parts go. So I'll clean up the surfaces and I'll be back.
A few moments later.
So I'm back. I've cleaned the surface up. I've not spent ages and ages cleaning the surface up, but I've just got the worst of it off so we can see the chassis a little bit better. So the next thing I tend to do with these, before I cut any of the pieces out, can I actually start cleaning up the holes in any of the pieces before I break them all apart? Because whilst it's like this and all together, it's easier to just clean everything else up. So I'm going to clean up inside these holes and I'm going to show you how I do that. Generally with EDM cutting, the holes are pretty good and actually you can solder probably without doing this, but I just like to clean up inside the holes just to make sure that the solder's going to run all inside those holes and you get nice strong solder joints. So I tend to use a little tiny pointed diamond tool like this. It's really small and I can spin it up in my Proxon. Again, I'll put a link of where you can get the Proxons from down below. They're absolutely fantastic tools. This one's a corded one, but it's really small and quite light, but it's really powerful as well. So I'm going to use this to clean up inside all these holes.
One eternity later.
Right, there we are. I've cleaned them all up inside the holes. I don't know whether you can see that in the camera here, but you can look inside some of these holes here. And you can see it's just a very small radius as well on the edges. That'll help the solder to flow into the hole and give a little bit of a more larger surface area joint for the solder to take into those holes. The next thing I check is you can see there's going to be these hinges here for the front pans, and that's going to need a little bit of piano wire for that hinge. So I got myself a couple of bits of piano wire that are close to the right size, and I literally just try them in these little holes here and see which one fits. And it works out, if I bring that a little bit closer there, this one here doesn't quite fit. This is a 1mm, and then we head down a little bit further. This one here, I think that's a little bit wobbly, that one there, and also it's because it's got to sit into here. The reason why I'm putting it in here is because these are the little bits here that are going to solder into there to make the hinges. This one's a little bit wobbly in there, so I think that's something like 0.6, something like that of a millimeter. And this one is 0.8. You can see that one fits nicely in there, and it also fits nice in the hole. There's a tiny little bit of movement in the hole, which is what I want you to check as well, because sometimes these holes can be really tight, and if they're really tight, then again you need to use a little Dremel with your little diamond bit and open up the hole a fraction so that your piano wire hinge can slide nicely through there. So, and that's all easy to do before you cut these pieces off, because once you've cut them off, they're really hard to hold and then get in there and start cleaning everything else up. So I've got myself a piece of wire that I know is going to fit for the front pin hinges or pan hinges. The outer pan hinges are going to be done with what looks like some of the other pieces, something like this maybe. I think that's possibly the outer pan hinge there and there. So to cut out all the pieces, I'm going to use again my Proxon with a little cut-off disc in there. I'm going to start by cutting the pans off of the center section. I'm going to start by again cutting this sprue there and this sprue there off, cutting the front bits off. So basically I'm left with just the center part on its own, so I can check that it's all nice and flat and straight and there hasn't been any distortion at all in the steel when it's been cut or posted. So there we have it. I've trimmed the pans off, as you can see here. I've trimmed all the bits off of all the edges. I still have these bits. These are still all on the sprue like that, but I'm going to trim them off as and when I need them, so then I won't lose them. It's probably worth saying at this point that trimming the chassis off and cutting it off can cause some sparks. You might have seen that in the previous video, so it's always good to put some goggles on when you're doing it. And also, because you're actually cutting through metal and grinding through metal, there will be a lot of dust. So I suggest you don't do it over perhaps exactly where you're going to build. Maybe you cover up your build area. Maybe you do it sort of inside a cardboard box or something like that, so that the bits and pieces don't go everywhere. It's quite easy to have a bit go flying off your workbench somewhere and not be able to find it. So doing it sort of inside a small cardboard box or in a corner somewhere makes it easier if the pieces do go flying to find them again. They shouldn't do, but just in case. I've also done one other thing as well, which I'll show you close up. So what I've also done at the same time is I've rounded all the lower edges of the pieces that are going to be sort of against the track here. So I've just smoothed off and rounded, there we are, all these leading edges of the pans here. I've also done the same, you can see here on the center section, all around the front here. I've rounded that off. I've even smoothed off, not anywhere near as much, but I've even smoothed off all the edges round here. You can see I've done it at the back of the chassis as well here. Anything here that could get caught on the track when you're running really low, perhaps at the end of a race, I've smoothed off all of those edges there, again with my Dremel disc, just to make sure that it's going to slide across the track nicely and nothing gets caught on the track surface or the braid. So after I've cut out this center section, the next thing I like to do is to check it's all flat. So I'm going to clean the block off, put a little bit of lighter fluid down and give the block a wipe over and a clean to make sure there's no remains or dust or dirt on the block. Also, it's handy to give the bottom of the chassis a bit of a wipe off as well to make sure again there's no dirt or dust or so on the bottom of the chassis. Then you can put it on your block and you can sort of hold it in place. You can tap various little bits of it like this and see if any of it moves at all and see how flat it is on the block. You can sort of hold it at the back, tap a corner, make sure nothing is twisted, make sure nothing is up in the air, make sure it's all nice and flat. If you've had an EDM cut chassis or wire EDM cut chassis, generally they're pretty flat. Maybe if it's a laser cut chassis, the laser introduces a lot more heat into the metal and can distort it and bend it. Again, water jet cutting uses a lot of force to push through the chassis, so you could end up on some thin bits like the rails here with them being slightly bent and warped, so you have to straighten them all out. But say this one's been EDM cut, so it's sitting pretty flat and straight. I'm happy that that is flat enough on the block. And I'm going to do the same with each pan as well. Again, put those on the block and make sure that they sit again nice and flat and they're not twisted or bent. So now I'm happy that the center section is flat and the pans are flat. I'm going to take some of these pieces now and I'm going to start trimming them out and check out how they fit into the center section. So I know that this bit here is useful for the front of the pan, so there's a piece like that on each one. But I'm going to start trimming some of these out now so they're ready to slot in and I can test fit all the parts. So I don't know whether you can see there, on this piece here, but I've used my little tiny diamond pointed bit and I've just rounded off. Can you see the corners inside this little loop where something's going to pass through this little loop here, and I've just rounded off all those corners nicely to make sure that whatever's going to pass through there will slide nicely and not bind up on any of the sharp edges. So there we are. I've cut all the parts out and I've just fitted them in the places where they're going to go onto this center section. Now, I wonder if those of you that guessed what this chassis was going to turn out to be, you were pretty much right, but not quite in terms of specifics of what this chassis was actually going to be. So I wonder if I can just lift it up and tip it a little bit for you, just so you can see some things here. The guide tab will just come out of place there, but have a look around this area here and see if you can be a little bit more specific about the type of class or the type of chassis that this might actually be. It's not just a you-know-what. It's a certain type of you-know-what, and it's quite a modern idea in slot car racing. So I'm going to leave it there, and I'll see you again next time when we'll start to solder this all together. Have a guess. Put in the comments down below if you know the specific type of class that this is going in and what this is all about at the back end here on the chassis. Again, if you haven't done so already, please hit the big C and subscribe. Hit the thumbs up, and if you really like my videos and you've managed to watch quite a few of the other ones, there should be a little thanks button somewhere down below. You can give me a little contribution and it all goes towards making some more videos and trying to help out the slot racing community. So thank you very much. I'll see you again next time. Bye for now.